Can I have your attention, please? Calling all new moms, seasoned moms, soon-to-be moms, and all you mamas in between. Welcome to the MomFriends podcast.
Hey mamas, I am sitting here in my pajamas on my couch because I needed to let you know that unfortunately Mama Rach, aka me, didn't actually record the audio for her episode this week, and she had a wonderful guest on who gave me such an incredible episode. So I was like, we can't redo this, we have to keep this one. So just a warning, the audio on this one is not the best, but we've done absolutely everything we can to fix it, and this is the best we got, but I promise you it is worth it. My mother-in-law, Stephanie Martin. Stephanie Martin, welcome to MomFriends.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. And for all our listeners, this is my mother-in-law. Her oldest son is my husband. So I'm actually excited because we've only known each other for like 6.5 years. So yeah, I don't know all your whole journey. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Yes.
Usually I just start with like, who makes you a mom? So how many kids do you have? How old are they? And then obviously if you want to share their name, then you can.
Okay. So I have 4 boys, and my oldest son is Dustin, who's just turning 32 this year. Mm-hmm. And I have Jesse, who's my second oldest, and he's turning 30 this year. Lucas is my third son, and he's 28. Turning 29 this year. Gosh. And then I have my straggler, Max, who just turned 21 in June.
Oh my God.
So I have all adult sons now.
4 boys.
Yes, 4 boys.
Honestly, I have 1 and I can't even imagine the chaos.
It was crazy. It was fun.
What was the craziest thing each of them did? Do you remember?
Oh, Lord. Well,
too many?
So I had the first 3 were 3 in 3 years, 1 month, and 11 days. So don't ask me how I know that, but it's easy. October 10th to November 21st, right?
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So they were like all growing up together very closely, right? So the craziest things they did as like little wee people, do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Dustin, your husband.
Yeah, hit me.
When he was little, he loved nature. He was loved to be outside. He was an outdoorsman at the very young age of 3.
That makes sense.
4, yeah. And he would be out in the backyard, and he would always have his head under the eaves trough. Getting a nice shower. That was back in the day, when those things were a good idea for the kids.
That's funny.
He'd have his head under there, and it'd be freezing cold. I'm like, why are you doing this? But anyways, he was an outdoorsman, and as you can tell, he continued that pretty much.
Yeah.
Jesse was always doing crazy stuff. He one day found the flower. I have the photo of it. He one day found the flower in the kitchen. And my Newfoundland dog, who's much like my Sassy now, was just covered in flour. And you walk into the kitchen and you're like, what happened?
And she was a black dog too, right?
She was black. So she was like, powder coated puppy. So, and he's always like, I don't know what happened.
He did it.
Yeah, exactly. He would have blamed it on Dustin. Lucas was chill. He was super easy baby. He was happy. He was like always very stoic, even from a little person, So he didn't do anything. The only thing I could say about Lucas is we were on a ferry one time going across the ocean, if you can imagine. Or we were crossing to go over to out on the East Coast. And so maybe we weren't on the ocean.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're good.
So we were, just don't want to make stuff up here. Somebody's going to be like calling you and going, your mother-in-law doesn't know what she's talking about. So does that happen often?
Mm-mm.
No.
You might be the first. We'll have to see. Because you're on a ferry.
Yes. So we're on a ferry, and Lucas decides he wants to get pop out of the pop machine.
Okay.
Because that's the only thing that will stop him from crying, except for, you can only put money in the pop machine so many times and you really only need one pop.
Right, yep.
But that was the only thing that was going to keep him happy. So we spent a lot of time in the bathroom and walking around on the ferry. People were like, get your child in check. And I was like, oh my God, like you didn't have anywhere to go. So that was about his only story. Other than that, he was very, very easy, chill little guy. And then Max, having your fourth, I just decided nothing worked really with all the other three. They just did what they wanted, when they wanted, and at their own time, because the first three were all very different, right? So that you have three kids, you raise them what you think is very similar, and they all come out completely different, which is good because then they're unique and individual. But Max was easy. He was fully verbal by the time he was 18 months and potty trained. And he just showed up and he's like, yeah, I'm in charge, tried to, off Lucas a couple times. He was like, that's my mom, back off, So anyways,
that's funny.
But yeah, so they were all a bunch of crazy little characters. Yeah, Jesse's still pretty crazy.
Yeah, they all are in their own ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, let's just dive right in because I feel like we have a lot to talk about, which is good.
Yeah.
Let's kind of start near the beginning because I don't know much, but I do know your journey to motherhood was not smooth sailing.
Yeah, so it was, for sure. And so it's interesting because, it was so long ago. So that was like 3 now, probably 4 years ago. Yeah. So when I the very first time I was pregnant, I had a miscarriage. So, which was, traumatic and it was very upsetting. And, it's my first pregnancy, not knowing what to expect. It was very early. So it was around 6 or 7 weeks.
Right.
And,
still though, I feel like it's always traumatic.
Yeah. So the things I think people don't understand about miscarriages is this, over many years of reflection and understanding and, it's that sort of thing. So miscarriages are more for people that have had them or, have just gone through them. It's more not that you've lost that exact, physical child. It's partly that, but it is a hormonal experience. It's a physically taxing experience. Plus it's, the whole dream of who that was, right? So it's like this big, the minute you're pregnant, you're excited and you can't wait. And, you have a whole, ideal created within your mind. So that's the loss, that I think people don't maybe give themselves, to grieve. That's what I'm grieving. I'm grieving the idea, the dreams and the hopes and everything. But, but that didn't reflect my second pregnancy, which was, Dustin, your husband. So, when you think about things from way far back, you look at it and you realize that, things happen for a reason. Yeah. Your life would have been very different if I wouldn't have had that, that child at that time. So,
for sure. Yeah, he wouldn't even be here.
Yeah. So things are, and then there's a whole nother question. Would they, would they just show up at a different time? Yeah, that's a whole ball of wax.
For sure. We can get down.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. And being older, now I've had time to reflect on these things and, look back. And then, so I had the miscarriage, then I had Dustin and of course it happened right after, just see there's the information. You wouldn't know. I don't even know if Dustin knows. It happened right after I dumped my motorcycle. So I was like, did that trigger it? Was that what happened? And then I didn't drive again because, not necessarily because of that. I was just turning a corner and I had just gotten a new tire and it just kind of scooted out from underneath me. But it could have been enough of a bump that, I don't know. I'm not really understanding, all the reasons behind everything or whether it was just timing. So then I, had that had lots of emotion, lots of experience with that. And then I went on to have another pregnancy, which was Dustin. And then I had 2 more right after. So I had Dustin, or not 2 more miscarriages, sorry. 2 more
kids.
Successful pregnancies. Yeah. Cool. Yes. But in total, I have had 4 miscarriages. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I had 4 pregnancies that were successful and 4 that were miscarriages. So,
wow.
That's probably something, I don't know. I never think whether that's something people know about me because, it depends on who you're sharing with and whether it comes up in conversation. It's not something I'm, shy about or don't like to talk about at all.
No, but that's still like a really heavy thing. Yeah. Like I have not experienced it. I can't even imagine. Especially, I'm sure it didn't get easier either time, but I think especially like you said, the very first one and after something, like I can't even imagine that kind of guilt that you're putting on yourself, even though it probably wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
But
and it was
being young and,
yes,
because you were pretty young for that pregnancy, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I was 25, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I think I was, 25 with my, maybe I was 24 and then 25 when I had Dustin, and then 28. And by the time I had Lucas, I was 29. Yeah. So, then, yeah. And then I had those 3, and then there was a long break between children because, that's kind of.
Your husband had a vasectomy.
I told him I wasn't done, and he didn't believe me. So, anyways, so he said we were done. I said we weren't. This is a long story or short story, but it's one of those ones that I don't usually share on YouTube, but I don't think he'll care. I don't think he'll care. Anyway, so we I was not done, and the best way I can describe it is there was somebody knocking on the door, going, I'm not done. Well, I was feeling like I wasn't done because I had this feeling like I had to have another child. It was just like a push.
Your family wasn't complete.
It was just, it wouldn't let me go.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it would not release me, this need to have another child for sure. And my goal was to have 2 more because we waited so long, right? Because it was 7 years later. Yeah, I think. Sure. And Max was, a lot of people think he was a whoops, but he was actually on purpose. And
very, very much on purpose.
Because as you know the story, Les had a reversal. I think the conversation went like, fine, if you can get the money together to have the reversal done, I'll do that. And then
oh my God,
you'll have to check to make sure we can put this on air that he doesn't care. But so magically, I came up with like $3,000, and I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. So I can't quite remember how I collected the funds, but they got to me.
They appeared because they needed them.
To be there. Yeah, so I got the money, and I don't think he thought I would get the money. So
he's like, "Well, I actually have to go through with this now."
So he got the reversal, and then it's very statistically
not likely.
Yeah, it's not huge odds that you will have pregnancy after that, but it's the odds are okay.
Yeah, they were enough for you at the time.
They were enough for me. Yeah, I was that and bound. So that was 7 years later, and then right after
reversal was 7 years later.
It was about 6 years later. No, it was like it. I was pregnant fairly quickly. I had 1 miscarriage before Max.
Okay.
And then it was pretty early again. So it would have been but I think, was that because of the surgeries, et cetera, and that. And then I got pregnant with Max. And then he was, and I had Max at home.
Yes.
So, because I was into the hospital? Yes. So I had the first 3 in the hospitals, which was really interesting because I had different doctors. For one, I had a woman doctor at the time, and she delivered Dustin. And he was, so there were 8'7", 8'6", 8'9", and 9'2". Wow. So they were big boys.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I was very stressed out.
Yeah.
I had a 9-pounder because all your kids are huge.
I know. And I remember my first pregnancy with Dustin, the doctor saying, "Oh, he's got a really big head." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And she's like, "Yeah, no, that's not great." She's like, "Oh, no, that's not good. This means it's going to be a painful birth." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And, of course, you didn't know anything.
Are there any, like, non-painful births, though?
No, I don't think so.
Right.
And when we were young, you went to, like, Lamaze and you went to all these programs, and I don't feel like they exist anymore, which really sucks.
I don't think they do. Like, we only watched, like, some YouTube ones from, like, the States.
But you went to classes, you met other mummies and daddies, and everybody went together, and, if you didn't... they
practice stuff.
Well, they taught you what it was going to feel like. You can't tell anybody what it's going to feel like because there is no explanation.
There's not.
There is no explanation. And then they taught you how to breathe, which really doesn't work, but it's nice to think you have an idea. They taught you they showed you where you were going to go. You got a little tour of the hospital. You got a little package. You got so this was for the first 3, births,
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So
did you do classes each time?
I think I did probably for the first 1 or maybe even 2. And all the births were completely different. With Dustin, I think I was on my 3rd tank of laughing gas where the doctor came in and told me it was time to get rid of the laughing gas, and it was like holding me up.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't use it. Like, I was in so much pain. It just made me so claustrophobic. And I was like,
I think it just made me high, and I was just like, get me out of here. But it was just something to breathe. I don't know. And then Dustin was born like at 5:30 in the morning, and I think I went into labor with him probably at 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And then he was, his shoulders got stuck, but it was not that big of a deal. I got had an episiotomy, which, you don't know about until, and I think they use those things much more.
They definitely did.
Commonly then.
It was a little bit more of a quicker decision, whereas now it's like, they really try not to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then before they did lots of stuff.
Oh, girl.
And then, my mom, if you want to know something even more interesting, when my mom had babies, they had, they would knock you out and take the baby. My mom's like, what? My mom's like, I didn't even know if this was really my baby. She's like,
how do I know? Like general anesthetic?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that's interesting. Like the changes that they made in birthing and even through my pregnancies. But that was my mom's story. She's like, yeah, you don't know. They knocked you out and then they,
were they ever on a C-section, or how does that even work?
They probably were. I have no idea, but she didn't have C-sections. I think they just probably waited till you were ready. I don't know. That's probably why they have some marks on their head when they go out.
Well, their heads are so big.
Swollen. So Dustin was pretty average first birth, right? And then Jesse, I had the stomach flu the week before I had him. Oh. And I was literally the day before crouched at the toilet because I was sick, right? However, didn't know that this was going to make things move along a lot quicker. So I told the doctor, I was like telling the doctor, well, I'm getting these funny contractions. And they're like, I don't know, kind of coming and going. He goes, how far are they apart? Well, it seems to be 3 minutes. He's like, yeah, you should probably come to the hospital. So I was like, oh, okay. So we went to the hospital and, they did my check, and then they're like, yeah, you need to go to the delivery room. I'm like, what? And then they're like, try these squats. So, we tried some squats, and then they're like, yeah, you need to lay down on the table. And, then I checked Les was testing the
no, he wasn't. Oh my God.
I'm like, put that down. But anyways, Jesse flew out. Yeah, it was still painful. I think I remember telling the doctor at the time, I'm like, this is so painful. And he's like, yeah, I think every woman would agree with that, So he was empathetic. And then Lucas was, I thought he's going to be a breeze, right?
Yeah, now I've supposed to
it's supposed to get quicker. And no, he wasn't. I remember after I had him, Les looking at me, kind of like this. And I'm like, what? And I burst all the blood vessels in my face, pushing him out, because it was like so much pressure. I'm getting him out, yeah. And I think each time I had laughing gas. Morphine made me throw up, so I never tried that again. But I had laughing gas each time. Mm-hmm. And each time it was super painful and it was super, it's
a hard.
And I had all natural. Because every time I think I always kind of jumped from, 6 centimeters to 9,
they progressed
back then they had a window where you had to be between. I don't know if they still do.
I think they do a little bit, yeah. But.
Yeah, so you have to be between that window in order to get the epidural. But anyways, I was never a candidate, I guess. And so I had them naturally. By that time, I'm just like, let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, let me get this over with.
And he also had big, I don't know if he had a big head, but he had sticky shoulders. So his shoulders stuck as well. And then, but they, just give him a little twist and got him out. So that one was a lot longer. I think I went in the evening and I think I had him in the morning. Oh, and God. I brought Nancy in, Les's mom. She came in with me. I asked her if she was interested in coming in, and she was just she was so pleased that I had asked her, right? And
for the third one?
Yeah. So she was and she's like, you know what? I've never been, I had 5 kids of my own. I never experienced, clearly they had a very different experience in birthing than we did. And you know what? I was like the best choice I made then because, she was like patting my head with this cool compress, and I'm like, this is the nicest thing that's ever happened to me in my life, I think, and she was just she was just such a kind person in general. Yeah. So,
that's cool.
So the boy's Nana was there. Yeah. And she was a very, very kind person. So it was really nice. She was very nurturing to me, which I had never really experienced. You get the doctors, but not your own personal nurture.
Yeah.
So, and then Max, it was completely different. So,
what made you decide to do a home birth?
Well, so with Lucas, I was really interested in having a midwife, but that was so they were born 92, 94, and 95. So 1995, midwives were just coming onto the scene.
Oh, okay.
Doctors didn't like them. Nurses didn't like them. Hospitals didn't like them.
Yes.
There was a big rift between the hospitals, the doctors, and the midwives
were like hooey and they are all natural home
witchcraft, and, all that kind of stuff.
Which nowadays is so much better, thank goodness.
So it was interesting because I decided to not go with the midwife because I knew there was a rift and I felt like the only person that was going to get screwed over was the patient. And for me, that would be the baby, right? So I was just like, I will never get involved in a political debate because you're the one you will be the fallen, right? So that was not worth the risk or anything. And I was really interested in it at that time. So then 7 years later, I was working in a naturopathic doctor's office and I worked for a naturopath and a chiropractor, acupuncture doctor. And she said, my naturopathic doctor I worked for, she said, hey, why don't you get a midwife? And I'm like, I wanted one, but it just didn't work out because they weren't being accepted. And she's like, oh, it's totally different now. Okay. You can totally get one. So I called and there was Rebecca. She was just starting at Stratford Midwives. And it was her first. And I'm like, that's perfect. It's your first, tour as a midwife and it's my 4th child. So we should be golden.
I'll teach you what to do.
And I wanted a home birth and I had studied it and gotten involved in all the, books and I read everything. And statistically speaking, it's actually slightly safer to have your baby at home. But they actually put births where people have them by accident in the car. On the way, they consider those, they add them into their statistics for home births, which isn't very accurate. So I knew all the, I knew all the issues and statistics and the risks, and I had my bags packed and I was ready to go. And of course, they had to go within a certain guidelines. So as soon as you didn't meet one of their criteria, they had to refer you to an OBGYN or they had to refer you to it.
If you're any kind of high risk at all.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not.
And if you change during the pregnancy, if you change during the birth, if you, any of those, I actually wanted to be a midwife. Yeah. I think I would have been a midwife if I was born like 100 years ago. And I think, if I wouldn't have had kids, but after I had 4 kids, I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed for anybody in my sleep.
Yeah, touche.
Yeah. So Max was born at home. I wanted to have a water birth. That was one of the reasons. And they won't let you do that in the hospital, which is dumb. They should totally let that happen.
Okay, like a pool or something in here?
Yeah. I had a baby pool set up.
That's amazing.
And it's kind of funny because the video I seen right before I had Max, I was watching a whole bunch of back then on, I don't know whether it was what channel it would have been on, like when we had TV, that you watch the actual shows, not YouTube.
Yeah.
They had this birthing one. So it was like all they did was births. So you got to watch all these different births. And they, and then I watched one and I'm like, that can't be the last one I watched because it didn't go very good, But then the next one I watched, she was having a water birth and then she had to get out of the tub sort of thing to finish the birth. So anyways, I'm like, okay, that's a better one. At least she had a water birth, or was having one. So anyways, of course, we had the home birth and had a big, like as big as the studio was the apartment that we had our room in because it was a giant house. And Sally, Aunt Sally was coming along. She came along for the thing. And then my mom had made such a big stink about me having Nancy at the previous birth. I'm like, well, you're invited. And she's like,
oh my God, you had a whole party.
We had a whole party. And my mom was like, wish she wouldn't have, she didn't like, pain and agony. Well, she had lots of health issues, but she didn't like when somebody else was having, in pain or anything.
Right.
So I did the water birth and you know what? And the boys were there too. And
yeah, because they would have been, 7 and 10 or something?
7, 8, and 9 probably, or 10.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were between 7 and 10. And, looking back, I'm like, I probably wouldn't have done that now. But I was just so open about everything. And I'm like, these are really natural things. And the videos I watched, everybody was like, had the family there and everything. And I'm like, well,
you had a whole cheering squad.
Yeah. So
did you give birth in the water?
Well, so it was quite late at night and I went into labor and then I was like, oh, this is easy. So I'm at home. So I can just run up and down the stairs and get things done. Cause she's like, well, just go move around, the midwife. And so
you don't go anywhere.
Yeah, you don't have to go anywhere. You just go do your things that you got to get done. And I, had 3 kids. So
laundry in the dryer, dishes.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I should have done this. I should have done that. So, meanwhile you're doing stairs and that's probably good for birthing and everything, for delivery. So then I had a little bit of that. And then I was just sitting there and she's like, oh, I just can't tell when, you're really in labor. Like I can't tell. And then all of a sudden it kind of switched to, So then I got in the pool. So, you have like half a swimsuit on sort of thing, when you're in the pool by then. He was almost out, but then the shoulders got stuck. So now babies don't breathe until they hit the surface, right? Because they still think they're in the amniotic fluid, right? So he was kind of stuck and I think Les was disappointed because he was delivering the baby. They were letting him deliver the baby. Oh my God,
she's right in there.
Yeah. And Sally was quite thrilled because, she had her sheep gloves.
No, she didn't.
She did. And the midwives are like, where did you get those? And she's like, these are from my sheep. And
from the farm.
They're pink, and everything. Yeah.
She was like ready to go.
She was like, I'm here.
I'm birthing a calf.
And she was hugely helpful because like he was stuck a little bit, the sticky shoulder thing. Mm-hmm. So they're like, okay, we think we're going to have to get you out. So, she was right there to help me up, so they were, and then I just had everything set up. So I laid down beside it and poof, then he came out. His shoulder got unstuck, and probably just the movement of going from here to there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't fully, and I pushed him out really in record time because I was like, get out. Like this is painful, horrible, and he was big.
And I had no laughing gas.
Nothing, because they're not allowed to bring anything when they have the baby at home.
Right, because there's no, monitoring.
Yeah, which is kind of nonsense. She said it's because they would just be too much fun if they went to a party. I don't know.
Pass it around.
I was like, yeah, okay, fine. But, I think it would be valid. They are medical doctors, But anyways, or not medical doctors, but they're medically trained for babies for 4 years, only on birth. A regular doctor probably gets a month of it, So
as a regular nurse, I only had half the semester.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even on birth at all. It was just like maternity generalized.
Exactly.
So I don't remember anything.
Yeah, and they do 4 years specifically on it, and tons of intern work, right?
Yeah.
So I felt really comfortable with them. So he was born, he came out, he was a little bit non-responsive right at first, but he came out so quick, like I pushed him out so fast, like I kind of
he probably just like
here to there. He needed a second. Then of course they got him going, and then I know Rebecca said, okay, well I don't want to, distress anybody, but he's got I think it's just his ventricle. What is it? The ventricle where you have an extra one, and it's got to move over, and it's got one closes off. So she said, I don't think he has a heart murmur, which means if he had a heart murmur, we would have checked something off the criteria and we would have had to go to the hospital. She goes, I really hate to do that. She goes, but my deeper sense is that if we wait a few minutes and everybody leaves the room, turn the lights off, Max and mom get into bed, baby and mom get into bed, then she says, I think we'll check it again, and I think it'll have, I think it was just born too fast, and I think it'll have worked itself out. So
I know there's an extra valve, the valve will close. There's one that we don't have open. Was that maybe what?
That's what it was, yes. Exactly. And so she's like, you go make me coffee. Everybody go to bed, because it was late at night.
Yeah.
And
so you just calmed them.
So we just got into bed together, and they saved half the blankets that I had, just for scraps. They have a whole thing. You have so many bowls, stainless steel bowls. You have so many cloths. You make your bed with plastic sheets in between. So then you can give birth in your bed, and then you just roll it up real quick, and your bed's already made and ready to go for when the baby's.
Nice.
It's really efficient. It's pretty cool. And, cool. They were like, oh, we didn't want to use those. I'm like, they were rags, go ahead.
I can get new ones if they weren't. It's not that serious.
So they were, it was really neat. You had a whole protocol, and we didn't need to go to the hospital because once we did exactly what she said, and it was fine within 10 minutes. But, you think if we were in the hospital, would you have been rushed down the hallway? Would the lights have been so bright? Would baby have been moved
probably
from
called
mom?
A code or something.
Yeah, would baby be moved from mom? And then those things don't, just fix up as quickly or whatever.
Right.
So that's where I think statistics go in and things get changed because there's so much intervention.
Right.
But anyways,
it's two different types of training, and they're both effective in different ways, I guess. But I totally understand what you're saying. How
I would never
might have been unnecessary.
I would never recommend anybody, and I've told other people this. I would never have a first child at home. It's just you don't know what to expect. You don't know that you're not going to need medication.
Totally.
You don't like people who are like, I have a really high pain tolerance and I don't need anything. They're like, it's pushing a watermelon out your bottom. And that's after you feel like you've been kicked in what I think would be like the nuts.
Literally so many times.
Every 3 minutes for 9 hours, right?
It's exhausting,
it's not enjoyable. It's painful. It does happen. Many people have done it naturally, but you don't know that your hips are going to be wide enough. You don't know that your body is how it's going to respond to birth, right?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. You can't predict what your body's going to do, like you said, or how the baby descends. Something could happen, like happened with Sammy.
Yeah.
You know, and like the things that you think are going natural until the last second. So I would agree with that.
My friend had that, and with the umbilical cord, and it was pressed with his head in the canal, and they had to push the baby back up. The nurse actually went, it's twice I've heard that story where the nurse actually, hold the baby up while they took her to surgery, but they actually gave her a C-section straight down. They did not prep her. They didn't freeze her or anything.
Oh my God.
She woke up and she said, and I was her doula at the time, and she woke up and she's like, I'm in pain. And I'm like, yeah, they didn't have time to freeze you. And she's like, it hurts. Is the baby okay? I'm like, he's perfect. You're okay. They didn't freeze you. And then she'd go to sleep again. And then she'd wake up. I'm in pain. Yeah.
Oh.
And I knew another lady that was a midwife in England, and she was just lovely. So this would have been a long time ago because England had it much earlier than we did as a norm. And she said she drove to the hospital with the baby.
With her hand up.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So that in England, you would way more likely have a baby with a midwife. And and then hospital would have been secondary choice,
That's kind of cool.
Or in the event of something not going wrong. And
well, if you think about like 200-300 years ago and before, like we didn't have any of that stuff to give birth. You just did it like
my
do it, right?
Grandfather was born. I always heard the story. Don't really have too many people to check with, but he was born. He was born on the table in the summer kitchen. So you think hospitals baby being born in hospitals has not been that long. It's been like a generation, maybe 2 generations back. And then before that, they would have been born at home.
Right.
And then the doctors took it over, which, yes and no, it's good and it's not. But when you have a midwife, and have a hospital birth, I think you have the best of both worlds.
Totally. I loved my experience with the midwives.
When I went from having 3 doctors, when you go in with the sick people, you go wait for your appointment at the doctor, you get your 10 minutes to say it, and they look like you've been a big pain in the butt, and, go home.
They're trying. Right? They're just so busy, right?
Yeah, they're busy. You're just in the same lineup with the guy that has a, kidney infection or something. I don't know.
This one's got pneumonia. This one broke his leg.
He just coughed on me and I'm like pregnant, whatever,
Yeah.
So the midwife is like, well, come on in. We'll have our visit at our office. So let's talk for an hour. Okay.
Want some water?
Yeah.
What are your emotions today?
How are you feeling today? And you can just message me anytime. Oh, and then we'll just talk about this again next week. And it's just the relief and the nurturing and the amazing feeling you get from being cared for during such a special time, right?
Totally. And then, like, I don't know what it was when you had them, but, like, after we did, like, I think it was 3 or 6 weeks after they would come to my house for the visits, and we didn't have to drive anywhere.
Yes.
Like, that was amazing. Another
really impressive thing was so I'll try not to get emotional. It's okay. But it was about their kindness is when, I had a miscarriage, right? So before Max, I had one. It wasn't that big of a deal. Then I had Max and I had a midwife. And then after I had 2 late miscarriages, but they came to the house. And they just were so caring, They came and took care of me, and they made sure I was okay. And the one miscarriage was, they were both very, pretty traumatic. That's why I decided we were done.
Yeah.
But, so I have negative type blood, and Les would have had positive, right? So I needed Rogam.
Okay.
So, and my mom had the same, but she had her babies in the right order. But, so I had to have Rogam after I have a miscarriage too.
Oh.
Because if your baby's not the right blood type, I think then you get Rogam, or I can't even remember. It's been so long.
Because then they'll fight each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so so she came to the house, just loving, caring, you wouldn't have got that at the hospital, right? So I had gone, these are kind of interesting stories. When I had the first miscarriage, I found out at an ultrasound. I was by myself, and it was...
you didn't even know?
No, there was just no heartbeat, right? So I was, of course, devastated. And it's kind of all a blur, and it was so long ago. I remember I was trying to phone home, and it wasn't like, we had the cell phone. I don't know whether we did have cell phones, I'm sure, but the phone lines were down or something. Like, I just remember there was so many weird things going on right then. And I'm trying to phone home, and the lady from the ultrasound said, well, you are under a lot of stress, because my mom was sick, and my mom was in cancer treatments, and, I think Nana had just passed, and
you just had an accident, and...
Yeah, no, this was
Which one?
After Max. So this is my third miscarriage. So that one, because the first two were so early, I might have probably heard the heartbeat, but, this was like we're going in at 12 weeks. So, yeah. So I'm at the hospital, or I'm at the ultrasound clinic, and she's like, well, you've been under a lot of stress, blah, 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 right? And my midwife was furious, right? She was like, that is not true. That was completely inaccurate. She had no business saying anything like that to you. Now, if it was your doctor, they would have been like, oh, yeah, I'm busy. Okay, get to the guy with the, toe fungus or something.
Yeah, but
yeah, so it was, you felt nurtured, cared for, protected, which, in my generation, you probably didn't have any of those above, it's your fourth child. It's my fifth, right? At this point, it would have been my fifth. So there's just no, support system. I am the support system, right? I'm taking care of my mom. I'm helping. My dad was already passed. Nana was gone, so I'm sort of the top.
And you're staying home at this point?
I stayed home for yes. So I stayed home.
So you have the whole house responsibilities, 3 other kids, 4 other kids.
And, Les would have been traveling at the time or whatever. So.
But that doesn't mean.
No. So the midwife was like right there, and she was like,
don't let that go in your head, because this is not your fault.
Like she said, that is not true at all. She said, that is not how it works. She said, babies are born in third world countries. This is ridiculous. There's no amount of stress that would make this happen. That is not true. That's not factual. And I believed her, right?
Good,
so she was somebody I trusted and believed, and so then...
I think that's really good. I just want to pause just for a second. I think that's really good for a lot of moms right now, if there's anybody in the thick of it.
Yeah.
To hear that now, because I think, obviously, I can only imagine as a mom, if anything happens, like, you just can't help but be like, what did I do?
It's our first, it's mother guilt. We have it from the minute our babies are born. We probably have it before, but everything's our fault. Everything's our responsibility. We must feel guilty. I used to say guilt is my only emotion.
Right?
I live off guilt. And, when you lose a baby, you're like, what did I do? What could I have done? But she was in my face and like, you didn't do anything.
You're not going down that.
You're not going down. She stopped me and would not allow me to think that it was my fault.
God bless this midwife.
Yeah. Rebecca was awesome.
Rebecca, we love you. Thank you.
And then it got, then it kind of even went another twofold where, so I had that, and I just basically didn't get a D&C or anything. It was pretty much natural miscarriage. Really traumatic when it's 12 weeks, because now this is almost at the point where, you're seeing much more growth and development within the baby.
Yeah.
So then, of course, I didn't let that stop me. I was pretty determined. I was going to have another baby. So I had 2 little ones, at that time. So I had my first 3 and then my second. And 2, and then I didn't want Max to be an only, child, right? So, then I had another pregnancy, and then at 12 weeks again, I miscarried. And that was, at a time where, at this point, I think my mom was in the hospital in palliative care. So I was having a miscarriage. I couldn't go to my mom. She was sure, this is quite interesting. She was sure she caused my miscarriage.
Oh my God.
So thank God for Rebecca, because Rebecca told me that is not possible the previous time. So I was able to tell my mom that it had nothing to do with her. That was not possible. That's not how miscarriages work, right? So I can't get to her because she's, because I can't go to the hospital. I just couldn't get up. And, I couldn't go anywhere. Yeah. The midwives were coming to me to take care of me. And thank God. And then I did have a D&C for that one.
Oh my goodness.
And I recall then I went to the hospital when I was able to go back, and and my mother never cried either. Now you know where I get it. But now I'm just crying on YouTube just because, why not?
Oh, I appreciate you so much.
So I went to my mom, and she was at the end stages. So I didn't want to not go because I knew they were going to snow her, which, at the end of life, they put you into basically an induced coma, right?
Just keep you comfortable. Yeah.
Keep you comfortable. Yeah. So you're asleep. So I went there, and then, she had passed. So that night, I'm at the hospital, I had developed an infection from the D&C. I'm trying to keep everything under control. But I didn't know I had an, infection at the time. So, you can have a natural, miscarriage and have no problems, and you can have, or you can have a D&C and have no problems, or you can have either one and end up with some troubles. It's just depending on what, if everything came out okay or whatever, right? So, I went in. Yeah. So this is, so my mom passes, right? And that night, pretty huge. Myself and my sister and, my mom's friend was there, Joanne's mom. And we're there, and then she goes, and then I was said to my sister, I don't feel well, something's not right. And they're like, do you think you're just having stress, right? And I'm like, no, usually I'm really good in a crisis. I'm like,
yeah, you are. It's kind of, crazy.
Yeah. So crisis is usually my strong point. And I was just like, no, this is more than that. So my sister's like, well, let's go to ER, because she worked at the hospital, right? So she knew everybody there. And I'm like, I'm not going there if there's a lineup, because I'm not waiting, right? And she's, and at that time, Les had worked for the funeral home. So I had already called and told them that they could come. So they kind of had a heads up. So they were already at the hospital, and Les and Jeff were at the hospital, and they were, so I had a ride home, and I go down to the ER, and then she's like, oh yeah, you're sick. Yeah, we're giving you these big horse pills. So, for a lot of women, you don't have a choice of when, you have a baby and you have pregnancies and you have, miscarriages. Right. Life doesn't stop, right. Life might stop, and then, other life is carrying on, Yeah. So it's like this big cycle, you get sick from it, you have to go get treatment while somebody's, while you're losing a parent, so you don't always get what time you want. To just you don't get time to grieve. You don't get time to process. You don't get time to be sick. Once you have more than one child, you don't usually have the option. It's barely any time with one, but by the time you have 4, you're just on a treadmill, right? Yeah. And I always say you're on your way up the mountain. You
Always.
can't stop. You're not, like right now I'm going down the mountain. I'm like, you know, like I only stop for grandbabies and it's lovely, right? But I did, you know, so I got my treatment that night. They sent me, they were loving and caring, you know, and I was fortunate that, you know, I had my support system to come drive me home and everything. And then I must say, you know, for the Lockharts, you know, they made sure that they organized everything around me at that time. So much more kindness, you know, they're we're not having it this week. We're having it after. So I was able to be at home and get better and take care of myself. And, you know, I don't think I really had time to grieve my mom because, you know, on Thursday, it's right before Christmas, Dustin's last week of school. They've got skating, you know, so I'm driving around getting skates sharpened and, you know, so, and for us, you think, wow, right? That's a lot. But then I think the generation back, they were probably in the damn field, you know, with a baby trying to, like life was even harsher, you know, a generation, maybe 2 generations before that.
I don't think that I think that's a good mindset to like be grateful for where you're at now, but I definitely think it's okay because this is what you know. And I think that, like it doesn't have to negate the feelings and like the sadness and the grief.
It's not a competition, right? For anyone, just because you have, you know, 2 loving parents that are in your house helping you, don't feel like your grief is any less. And you know what, when I look at it that way too, I think, yes, I would never ask anybody not to grieve anymore. I'm just harder on myself.
I know. We all
Suck it up and let's move on. So I think it's important for people to know that miscarriages happen. Life happens. The more I move forward in life, I realize that things happen for a reason. And that's okay because all of our growth comes from these experiences and all of our life plays out, you know, for us sitting here, you know.
Absolutely.
Because of my first miscarriage, right?
Absolutely.
It happened. So, you know, some things, it's good to grieve. It's good to, you know, and children are just, the greatest godsend, the most work, the most frustrating, and the all of your biggest, the most rewarding, and your biggest heartbreaks will come probably through your children.
Right.
And I remember hearing that from my mom, and I didn't think she knew what she's talking about.
Right. Well, and in the moment, like, you know, as much as when someone's in that full grief period and it's like currently happening, I think hearing everything happens for a reason. If someone were to say, you'd be like, shut up. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what the reason is, but I think it's cool that like post and then hindsight, you can kind of look at your life from an outside perspective and be like, I am who I am today because of these things. I have the children I have today because of these things and their partners and their grandbabies and like all the life experiences that you had. Now you're like, okay, now I see the reasons, but obviously in the thick of it, you're like, why is this happening to me? Like, this is the worst possible thing. There's no reason for this. This is just awful. What did I do to deserve this karma, you know? But guilt, I think that's good for
fear, sadness, grief, you know, and it's like, and, you know, you realize, and that's one of the things about getting older is that you start to see it and you can understand, hopefully you see it. And, you know, I mean, that's growth. You see it and you understand it and you experience it. And you know that nothing's going to be perfect. And that's the only guarantee in life is that life is going to throw stuff at you. And, you know, you either take the bounce and go quickly or, you know, you just drop with it. And, you know, parenting is all about bouncing, you know, and sometimes you don't know wellness if you don't know sickness. And sometimes you don't know, and
you don't know gratitude unless you know grief, right? You don't.
And I never took babies for granted because I had lost a niece to SIDS when I was 17. My sister's daughter. And I was already traumatized by that. And I never assumed life was a given.
Right.
From that young age. So, and
I think that's
I was always pricking my babies when they were sleeping.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
I was like, are they breathing? Lick my finger, put it under their nose.
And that makes sense because I think, because Dustin was a lot like that. Like is he breathing? Is he breathing? And I'm like, yes, just chill. But obviously his comes from your life experiences and like he's seen and knows what you've gone through and he's heard all that. So that makes a lot more sense to me now that he
probably didn't trust the process because somehow he picked up on my not trusting the process, maybe. And in the same family, they had lost another, baby. So, but of course, you see the next one that is fine and thriving and, you just see.
Somehow it was worth it.
Yeah. You can't have life without heartache.
Right.
You can't have only good, no bad. And raising children, we're so hard on ourselves. We're so, we got to do this right. We got to do this right. And, I had a dream about my mom and she's like, we should have just sat a little bit longer, and I think that was like a profound message like coming back. Yeah. Relax and enjoy it. It goes so fast. I mean, Christ, we're sitting here and we have like a grandbaby,
literally.
Like, where did my life
and I'm
go?
like, did we not just like meet 6 years ago? And how is this happening?
Yeah.
Totally. And I think like, I've heard this one thing that said like, you are not going to remember, I think you might have even sent me the video. Like, you're not going to remember all the times you're mad at your children for the littlest things. So just take a breath because this is not going to last very long.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely am not perfect at it. And I think even going back to what you said a little bit ago, like, you're not going to be perfect as a parent. Like, nothing in life that's guaranteed. So just let it go and do your best. And that's all you can do. But I definitely still have moments where I'm like, I get really frustrated. And then I'm just like, he's a toddler. He's supposed to throw food on the floor. Like, just chill. But I'm like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah, it's true. And then, when you have 2, then you're like, oh yeah, this is normal. And you tell yourself that, right? When you have 4, you're like, yeah, I quit, And then you're like, wow, if I could only have my 4th first. I always tell Max that if I
had you first, life would have been so much easier.
So easy, because he was just a breeze. But I think he was.
I think we're all high strung.
I think he was knocking on the door going, let me in. I'm on my way, and
I'm your chill pill.
Yeah. And everyone brings something so different to the table, you know? And it's pretty amazing. But again, with kids, you just gotta enjoy it. But that's just us reminding you, trying to help. It's not us saying, do this and just don't, because we were stressed out.
Absolutely.
And we were exhausted and we were like,
normal.
And our parents probably just locked us out of the house, which was normal back then.
Yeah.
But we're just saying, wow, it went fast. I remember my grandma saying we had her out to a campfire and the boys would have been little, like 7, 8, 9. She was probably in her 80s and she's like, it just feels like yesterday. And I was like, ooh, I better start enjoying, because that's somebody in their 80s. And now that I'm, 57 this year, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be here before you know it because time goes fast.
And you're probably sitting here like, were my kids not just kids? Like, how do they have kids?
How do they have kids?
Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What would you say is like, looking back on your journey of motherhood is like, what is something you're so proud of for yourself as a mom?
Well, I just look at all 4 of the boys and I just am so proud. Like, I just, and I tell them like the way you love your baby is the way I love you, right? Like, I know you don't get that, but the way you're protective over your baby and the way you feel about your child is exactly the way I feel about you. And it doesn't change. You have to let go a lot, especially if you have sons. It's like, oh boy, they don't, I don't know what girls are like.
There's a period where they don't want mom, I bet.
Yeah, and they're very independent, but that's what we want. We want them to be independent,
so
but it's hot. Yeah, that's perfect word for it, bittersweet. And I'm just so proud of each of them for who they are. And, I'm sure I'm like, too in their face and too honest and too, whatever. But
yeah, but
it's just who I am.
You love
and
them,
I'm
though.
sorry they, had a mother with ADHD, but oh well, I think I was kind of fun. It was like a circus. It was entertaining for me anyways.
There you go.
But, I just like everything they do. I mean, I'm so proud of them all, right? Like they're all great musicians, but I'm not proud of them because they're musicians. I'm proud of them because they're doing it and they love it. If they were great, barbers or, jugglers or anything, I don't care what they are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter. Like, I think they're all, Dustin's the firstborn, strong, take charge, independent, does amazing things in the town and everywhere. And, Jesse is our glue. He's our kind-hearted, loving, wonderful musician and, just keeps us all with hugs and love.
Yeah.
And, Lucas is prophetic and,
creative.
Stoic and creative. Yeah. And when he sings, it's just, he's singing. Like, he doesn't go by anybody else's book. And,
that's cool.
I love that about him. And Max is our mechanic and he's our, he's the one that brought, kept the family, together. Max is like Dustin in a lot of ways. He's kind of a blend between Dustin and Jesse. And he's, so strong and so independent and, he had to walk up the stairs when he was born, basically, because he just like not having any of this baby crap, and he is an amazing, once he came out of the, the corner, he is an amazing musician, and thoughtful. And Max is also, counseling all his friends, I think, and helping everyone. They're all helpful and loving and kind. And I think
and you are allowed to take some credit for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And you should be proud of yourself.
All that self-help since, 1989 did something. Yeah.
No, I think that's pretty cool. Is there anything, looking back that you're like, I don't want to say regret, because I don't think that we should live with regrets, but I think that you're like, well, I could have maybe done this differently.
Yeah.
It's okay if not, because I think it's cool.
I think if I could have done anything differently, I think I would have relaxed more into it, relaxed more into it and had more fun and maybe taken care of, myself a little bit more in the sense that I would have, given myself a bit more credit and so that I could give them a bit more,
fill your own cup.
Fun. Yeah. Fill my own cup. And then, I think I always tried as much as I could to fill their cup. Things that I think maybe were, things that happened in life, I think I should have not been edgy. Max will agree with these. He's always teasing me about being edgy. So
I know they all used to say you used to be a little bit edgy, but I was
probably
I've known you in more your mellow years, and I'm like, no way,
They told Cam he met me at a good time in my life. But you know what? If you have 4 boys and they're running around and there's balls flying at your head all the time, is it edgy or is it you're like, stop throwing things, stop beating each other up?
You have ADHD, and then all this is going on. You're probably just overstimulated.
Just slightly.
And I get overstimulated. I have 1 and 2 dogs, and that's enough right now.
Yes. Oh yeah, we had a puppy too. And we were probably taking other people's kids, but probably that I was just more uptight because, balls were probably flying at me and things were crazy. But you can't have children and not experience edginess. I think you wouldn't be human.
Nobody's a gentle parent,
and I don't
24/7.
think, I don't think you could be I think being a parent 24/7 is just a challenge, period. So, but I also would like to say hats off to people who have children with special needs.
Oh my gosh.
And I give so much respect because I think, I know the amount of challenges I experienced. I can't even imagine, some of the people coming home with kids with special needs and having other children or not having other children.
Either or,
And just, you're not off the clock at all, ever.
No, they
Whereas
don't
we get a little bit of
necessarily.
reprieve, like between 6 and 10, you're kind of on chill street.
More independence.
10 to 12,
Right.
you're kind of like on tending the empty store, I always said. So you're tending the empty store, you're just sitting there, kind of waiting for everybody to come back. And then from, let's say, 14 to 18, you're just trying to, if you have sons, you're just trying to make sure they stay alive because they're reckless, crazy, and then they don't want to talk. They mumble. You keep them from mumbling.
But it's not that like physical and mental dependence the same way as a newborn, and the same way children with special needs would have to be like all your whole life.
Yeah. And you may know that you're never getting off the mountain. I mean, I think you just deal with it. I think you just know that in your head.
You just come into it.
I can't imagine.
I
I hope everybody in those situations have wonderful support systems. But then again, you don't know if you do get those support systems. So,
until it happens,
you're not always guaranteed. But
so
I think hats off to any parents. Moms are magical. My one friend said something that I thought was amazing, and she just said, because you can't argue with it, she said, all women are beautiful. So every time I go to look at something and I go, well, should I be, especially when you're a mom or you're grandmaing and you're like, wow, I look pretty
your reflection,
rough, and you're like, whoa, or I'm getting old. Now I have to worry about being old and fat, my one friend said. But then I hear her voice going, all women are beautiful. And so I'm like, that is a great, the essence of woman is beautiful. The essence of women are beautiful. And we don't need to set ourselves to a standard that's unrealistic and stupid.
Agreed.
And just, by your fourth child, you're like, I don't even have a standard. I don't even care. Whatever. Oh yeah, coming to tell me something, preach, right? That was the blessing of the fourth child. Like, don't even come near me. I'm not even going to listen to you. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. Whatever. And, and it's hard not to take what people say, because like you've said before, people think they have the right to come up and explain to you. I probably do that to you guys too, but that's okay because it's me. No, come up and say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But it's just the good, mind your own
intentions. Yeah, but it's good intentions. Yeah. So it's like you try not to.
I just always like, that's nice. I know everything. Yeah. Okay.
We all think we do.
We do. Yeah.
But we all do know our kids the best. So it's kind of a tough balance, right? Yes. It's like, I appreciate it. Yeah. But then you just have to take everything with like
a grain of salt.
And just be like, okay, I see the intention. And if you can apply some things to your situation, great. Yeah. Just be respectful and then throw it out the window. Yeah. Yes.
And something they used to say in a self-help thing, take what you like and leave the rest behind. Take what you like, leave the rest behind.
You can't shoulder everything.
And I
like that.
And babies and everything's going to keep changing. They're going to keep telling you stories, and then they're going to change their mind another year, So like you said, trust yourself.
Does mom guilt ever go away, or do you still have it today?
Oh God, no. It rules me. Yeah. No.
Probably in a different way, I guess. But.
You know what? When your kids get into their 20s, it's just a whole nother world. It's almost like the twos get kids in their 20s, then they decide to tell you, then they are able to tell you everything that you should have done.
Oh boy.
But, it's part of the journey.
Take what you like and leave the rest when they say it.
It's like, get out of my house. Yeah, what are you talking about?
You don't know anything. I birthed
but then, then it's hard because then you have to look back, and what you perceived as happened and what they perceived as happened is very different experiences, right? So, but it's important for me to listen and to hear them and then decide what I'm going to do with it. And I always apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry you felt that way. I'm sorry, because I was not a perfect parent. I don't think anybody is.
Nobody.
And and
you probably had the same feelings about your parents, and they had the same about their parents. I think that just comes with the territory. Yeah. I'm sure it's not easy to hear.
No. It's horrible.
I never wanted to experience that from me. Whatever the situation is.
I tried so hard. I was just trying to survive that day, when it's like, but it's okay. You have to understand that it's good that they're communicating with you, and it's good that you're having that kind of a relationship. And, I then go to my mother's grave and apologize to her for being such an asshole. Sorry, we allowed to say that?
Sure.
I'm just like, you know what? I shouldn't have been such a jerk all those years, because like I was that, I didn't realize that was but it's part of life, right?
It is.
It's just part of the journey. And
we're all assholes to our parents at some point.
100%.
My kid is already, and he's only 16 months.
Right? Yeah.
Throws things at me.
Yeah.
Rude.
He's like, what does this do?
That would hurt. Thanks, pal.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. I totally understand that. And I think it's cool that like you're able to listen because it's not probably sometimes easy.
Oh, it's horrible
to hear. And and then you put, like you said, that mom guilt all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, it never goes away. I've just accepted it.
Good.
It's not gonna ever go away because it's just part of who we are. I mean, I think I can move through it quicker, and I think I can
remind yourself
not
they're
internalize. Okay. Yeah, and just know that now this is their journey, and this isn't my journey, and I have to, because that's one thing that is hard for me. I don't know if it's hard for other women. I'm assuming it is, to let them have their own journey and to back off and to not be so opinionated, but that might never change. But, I try to
your best.
I try to say my piece and then let it go. And sometimes you need space. Sometimes you need to be close, but sometimes you need a little bit of space in order to get closer. But there is always separation. The separation has to take place because, would it be weird if, I had to carry Dustin around? He's like 6'2", he's like, Mom, give me some crackers, Max is just getting past that. No, I'm just kidding. No, when you look at it that way, there you see the separation importance, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes separation isn't pretty.
Sure.
Sometimes it's messy.
Sure.
All of life is messy, but sometimes those separations are messy and sometimes they're heartbreaking and sometimes, but you have to understand that you have to trust other people to be on their journey. And that as moms, we actually have life too. And that's okay. So sometimes we have to reclaim our lives. I think that's the stage that I'm at, whereas, you reclaim who you are and you have to remember, you reflect, you have to look back at who you were as a younger person. And now it's my time again. And you get to have grandbabies, which is really so cool. Fun because it's like getting them again. But you're relaxed and you're excited
and you get to be the
happy,
fun one.
And you get to go home and you get to have a sleep and then you get to come back and go, aren't I fun? And we could eat crap and, my mother's like,
the veggies.
I'll feed him whatever the hell I want and it's none of your damn business. And I'm like, okay, and my kids love my mom. So,
I always love going to my Oma's because she always had cookies and treats and pop.
Yeah,
and
they do exactly
you get to
what
be that.
we needed. Yeah, so it's the fun times, but,
But you get to
but I also
create a whole new thing for yourself.
They say for women there's a second life sort of thing where you host children and everything. It's scary and it's they called it years ago the empty nest syndrome, and now it's like it's totally like I still have Max at home because he's going to he just turned 21 and so I don't feel that totally. Yeah, I have a nice, gentle transition into it. He's gently transitioning me into it before and then when he decides he's gone, he's like, getting out. But, that's what they all did. So, but that shows us that we've succeeded because they're independent and they're living their own lives and they don't need us. But it's like, but, that does show
and that bittersweet thing again where it's like, I'm sad you don't need me anymore, but I'm really proud that you don't need me anymore.
It's like, phew, and it's like, oh, and it's phew, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
So it's...
But I feel like at the end of the day, you probably wouldn't trade that because the alternative is like, oh, I haven't taught you independence. I haven't taught you how to be an adult. And yeah. What are you going to do with yourself?
Well,
you're pretty busy.
I'm really busy. Yeah,
I'm like that's actually a dumb question. You're way too busy.
I'm too busy, and then I'm and then I have the grandbabies, which I love. So I try to,
and they love you.
Slot them in. Yeah, and they're so fun. It's just like each one of them have had their own replica, like literally.
So true.
And it's so fun, like even just personality wise, right? Yeah, and so. keeping that in my time and then doing more music. And like I said, this year I want to, maybe get a little bit more into authentic. So I kind of go backwards in my music, where when I was young, I was very authentic with my music and very,
music's for me and whatever.
Original and all that. And then you kind of get into just whatever you need to do while you're paying the bills. And now it's like, maybe I'll just go back into a little bit more. I have a few ideas that I'd like to do. Mm-hmm. So,
I hope you do them. I think you should.
Those. Yeah, aim for those. And
because at this point, who cares?
Yeah.
You that's do where your life for you now. I love it. I'm empowered. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite thing about being a stay-at-home mom? For those years?
Never having to ask anybody permission. The reason I didn't want to be at work, I never wanted to ask permission to be able to take care of my children. So one time I had to go to work and they're like, my son has an ear infection and I need to take him, to the doctors. You can't take the time off. I couldn't wrap my head around that. And nobody else could take care of my children as well as I could.
I feel that's so hard.
I love being with my child. I didn't believe that anybody else would care for them, love them, nurture them, and allow them to be themselves like I could.
No.
I was going to be broke anyways. So we were real broke. Did I mention that? We were so broke. And we were broke. And those were the happiest days of my life. Being at home with the babies, and it was stressful. It was trying. It was crazy. It was chaotic. Best times, hands down. And we were broke. And money has never been the determining factor. House, property, money has never been the determining factor of whether it was good times in my life. Mm-hmm. It was what was going on with the people and the things and how much love was in the world, right?
Totally.
And being home with the kids, there's a magical time that, you can't get back. And
that's so evident because I've heard each of them kind of talk about their childhood, and that's so evident in the way that they talk about it that you were there. Like, they've all said it.
Yeah.
My mom was there. She was playing with us. We were doing stuff. None of them talk about stuff.
Yeah.
None of them talk about fancy houses and fancy vacations.
Yeah.
That didn't matter. But
we didn't have none of those.
It was all family time. It was working together at the hall, at the movie theater. It was like doing all these things. And I think that's like hitting the head on the nail?
Hitting the nail on the head.
I almost said it. Hitting the nail on the head with a hammer. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
In life is what's your priority? What's important?
Yes.
And your family and raising your kids was important.
And
I think that's really cool.
We did a lot of work together. I remember the saying, a family that works together eats. But we were always self-employed. I came from a self-employed family. I went to work a lot with my parents. Yeah. And I was able to take them to work with me. So I was able to work and have my kids. And we had a movie theater. So how fun is that?
How cool is that?
And then I had to get rid of it when they wouldn't work for popcorn anymore. And I had
popcorn for dinner. Now you have to pay.
And it was great. And then we all worked together in the music store. All the boys worked for me and taught, which was great. And so we were always together in that sense. And I was always available for them. And, when they were teenagers, I was driving them around. I was their roadie. Mm-hmm. And then that was when I said, okay, enough. I've got to do my own music because I put my music on hold for so long. I'm now everybody's roadie. So it's like time to do my own. But I was still able to do them. They're on stage with me a lot. They've come a lot. Out a lot. The grandbabies have joined me on stage, so I did everything. I adjusted everything around motherhood so that I could be there because this was my priority. And when I was camping the other day, I read a book by Stevie Nicks, who's like, I love Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, you sound like
Stevie Nicks. Her name's Stephanie Lynn too. And I always wanted to be Stevie. I read her book and I probably wouldn't have seen it before this year, but I was like, I think I had the better life. She never had children, and it was one of her regrets because I think she could have at one point. And I had the richer life, I have my music. I play. It's to smaller crowds, but they're meaningful. everybody it's like Cheers. Everybody knows my name. I didn't go far because I stayed home to take care of the tribe, but I still do my music. It's just like I still worked.
You got the best of both worlds.
Adjusted it all, but I'm not normal. I'm not common. I do things my way.
Nobody's normal.
I came out that way. I was just like, I'm doing it my way. This is the way I do it. The world is going to adjust to the way I'm doing it. And
I love that.
My priority was my kids, and whether or not they all agree with it or not, whether I did a good job, whatever. Okay. I did the best I could. I would, I tried to always be there for him. I'm still always there for him if I can be.
Absolutely.
And it's fun. Yeah. I think that's success. I think for me, I feel like I hit
I'm glad you feel that way. Because I know a lot of people, as they get into the second half of their life, look back and be like, we have friends that are older, in their 70s that focus on career. And they're like, I missed out on a lot of my kids' childhood and they actually physically regret it. And I hate when people have regrets in life. So I'm like, I love that. And I think that's such a cool message. Yeah.
And I feel like I missed out on my career. So that's why I'm like, oh, I need to do more work,
but you can always work later. You can't always have kids later.
You are so right. Cause I looked at Stevie Nicks' career, right? And and she almost, all the trouble they got into and, everything, the drugs and the addictions and everything. And I'm like, and then you wake up and you're 70 and no children, what is that? Like
your legacy now.
Yeah, that's your legacy, is just an auditorium, which,
it's cool. For people in that.
I'd like to, ideally, if I had an idol, really, as far as parenting and music, it would be Pink, because she takes her kids with her, and the whole crew are the children's family.
That's cool.
And it's really
I didn't know that about Pink.
Yeah, you should look her up. She's like my hero that way. But cool. That's not the way it quite went. So who knows? Maybe one of the boys will end up on the road and we can all just tour with them.
Well, there we go.
Take the whole zoo on the road.
Who gets it first, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, you know what? Let's wrap up.
I probably kept too...
No, this has been amazing. I seriously, before we get into our rapid fire questions, I really appreciate you opening up. And I think a lot of this conversation is going to be really healing for a lot of women. And
I hope so. I don't believe in holding things in. And I've never been not one to talk about it with somebody, but But it's still, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I don't
personal and it's a lot, but I think it's helpful, and I really appreciate it.
I hope so. I hope somebody if one person gets something out of it. If you got something out of it, I feel
absolutely
like
did.
I feel like
got
it's
so
a success.
Much out of this. I loved it. And that's why I was excited, because I'm like, we don't actually have time or energy. Not really energy, but to dive into it, because there's always other family, chasing. There's kids, there's so much going on. So
Rachel and I sitting at the kitchen table while everything's going on around us, going, and did you know? How did that happen? Yeah.
So this has been really cool.
No, and I appreciate you, and I'm thrilled that you are my daughter-in-law, and I see things where my mother-in-laws get a bad rap, but I'm like, I try to be
blessed.
And I'm excited because it's like I got daughters, I got girls.
4 sons
now.
And
so daughters. I get the daughters come later. That's what they always say for, you
get us after we're mad at our moms.
Yeah, that's right.
You get us when we're nicer to our moms.
We get the best part, I'm
I got the mother-in-law lottery, so I feel really lucky about that.
Yeah.
I hear horror stories and I'm like, can't relate, unfortunately.
And I try to be there for, you guys in the way that I would have liked to, either somebody was for me, or that, I would
feel like you want to be.
Yeah, I would have liked somebody to be for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
rapid fire, MOM. First M is, what is your most memorable moment as a mom so far? If you can pick one. Can be anything.
Oh my God, yeah. My most memorable moment as a mom. Oh my God, I've had so many.
Very
memorable mom. I think my grandchildren being born. because I'm at that next stage.
Yeah.
I really I think being on stage, you know what? I think when one night I was on stage and my grandchildren just started showing up, and I feel like I knew that life had a destiny, you know, and it was just one of those moments that froze, and I was just watching them come up and knowing how blessed I was, you know, and I think, I think there's just so many. I'd have to.
No, that's okay. They're all memorable, but
if
that one sticks out to you for most recently,
seeing my sons on stage and just, and I miss the memorable moments of them being little. I miss that sometimes, but I feel like I got it to the babies.
That's true.
Yeah.
I love that. That's cool. And the next M is, if you can remember, what would be an opinion that you had before you became a mom and that totally changed after you became a mom?
Everything.
Okay, cool.
You know what? It's like I think I heard you say it too, you know, you just judge everybody before you're a mom. And then the
guilty.
next, having a baby, I always said the next, you know, probably 30 years, are you sitting at a table eating crow? That's an old term for, you know, having
basically putting your foot in your mouth.
Yeah. It's like, wow.
Was wrong about that. Oh, so sorry about that.
Yeah. And then going, I should apologize to my mother, you know, and just everything, thinking I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't be like that.
I would never do this.
Yeah.
I would never do this to my kid. And then you're like, whoops.
Yeah.
It's not like, so easy.
Yeah. So I think everything.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I think, you know, just always thinking
that you could do better and
you knew what to do. It's easy to look from the outside in and make suggestions, ideals, and opinions. Yeah. And then when you get there, but I think that's part of life.
I think it is. And I think that's actually I think a good thing that moms go through that, because it just shows you how difficult motherhood really is. Yeah. Because you really don't know until you get into it.
And you can never grow personally, physically, or spiritually, or whatever that part of you is, until you have the love you feel for a child. Mm-hmm. That is something you can never get through any other experience on the planet.
No.
And I think that's what it's there for, because it's not just, it's for one thing, it's a love that is unexplainable. It's a love that's bigger than anything you'll ever have.
Absolutely.
You know, and
probably the most unconditional love that you will ever experience in your life.
It's so primal, and it's something that you can't explain to somebody that hasn't had children. And it's just like, you know, I can't explain to you what it's like to give birth or break my leg, you know, unless you've done it, right? Yeah. It's hard to explain. You can try and prepare somebody, but it's not going to help anyways. But you can still do it, you know?
No. I thought it would, but it didn't.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is way more intense than anyone ever described to me.
But how do you describe that?
But now I can't even, I could not describe that now.
No.
I could not. Yeah,
and you forget so quickly. I'm like,
this is why people have more children.
Yes.
And I've thought about it, and then my son will have a temper tantrum or something. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good for now.
Yeah. And you never know what you're going to get. It's like a, roll of the dice.
Literally.
And you get all these different, it's like puppies, they all come out with different personalities and temperaments. That's the children, one's a Chihuahua and one's like Jack Russell.
And one's like a big old teddy bear.
One's like a, Newfoundland dog.
Okay. And then our last one is, what the heck is it?
You said 2 M's.
Yeah, MOM.
You forgot the O.
We said opinion.
Oh, opinion, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
And then what is the most annoying thing your children do in this stage? I know they're old now, but...
Yeah, and so we're at the 20, 30.
Yep.
So I think give their opinion. Of me. They are now, it's reversed. Their parent, they think they're parents.
They think they're parents of you.
Yeah, they let me know all of, what I need to
You should be doing this, Mom.
Yeah,
you should be doing this, Mom.
They definitely
I've heard them all do it.
And, they'll be lecturing me and I'm like, who taught you this crap? So I think, your first half of your life, I always say the first half of your life you spend trying to please your parents. The second half of your life you try pleasing your children. And then third half, you realize nobody's freaking happy. So
I'm pleasing myself now.
I'm just going to give up on all this. No, it's just like, you know, yeah, then now it's tables have turned. They're mature, articulate, and they can let me know. And now they're parenting, so they're letting me know
about their kids,
their opinions and how they would have done it. They're reflecting back on our relationship, you know. So, but then they're going to go through lots. And I think, you know, Dustin said to me the other day, he says, I don't know what I said to you in my 20s, but I apologize. He goes, yeah, if I traumatized you, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you for saying that. Because, yeah, I'm pretty, no.
Free read it.
Yeah, I think the phrase was, let's hold up the beer, right? It was a joke amongst my friends. I explained to Max the other day that we do have a lot of opinions as parents. There's some things you don't say to your children, but you save it for your girlfriends. And
there you go. Well, we'll talk shit about them later.
Yeah. Don't tell their wives, though, you know.
Oh, man. That's funny. I love that. Well, I think that ends it for today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm so proud of you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Such a great job.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate
We'll
you.
talk to you next week, Mom Friends. Love you. Mwah.
Disclaimer. In no way do the conversations on this podcast replace the advice of health professionals. We are just speaking from our own experiences and what has worked for us. So speak to your midwives, OBs, or family doctors when necessary. When listening, always remember that every mom and every child is different, and what may work for one person might not work for another. There is no one way is the right way when it comes to parenting. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Mom Friends. Please like and subscribe to us so we can grow our beautiful motherhood community together. Talk soon. Mwah.